to today's guest speaker session with Kartik Singhal. And today we're going to cover the most exciting topics when it comes to machine learning engineering at big tech. I hope you guys have lots of questions. We went through the form that you guys submitted, and there were many amazing, awesome questions that we're going to go over today. But before we start, why don't you guys say where you're from, where are you guys joining from? And yeah, for the, let's see, let's look at the chat.
Antarctica. Oh wow.
That was unexpected. Are you for
Yeah.
real, Stephen? That's, I don't think that's real.
Yeah.
Berlin, Pakistan. Yeah, I'm joining from Indonesia currently. Kartik, where are you joining from?
Seattle, US.
Nice. How's the weather there, by the way?
Rainy, I guess. Yeah.
As
As
always.
expected. Yeah, as expected.
I see. Hello, guys. Canada, India, New York, California. Oh, nice. Bunch of people from California, San Diego, Pakistan, India, Atlanta. I love Atlanta, even though I've never been, but I've heard lots of great things about their food. I do want to visit. But great. That's awesome, guys.
I
So,
joined as well.
oh, Sai is here. Hello, Sai. Another speaker of ours is here. Good to see you. So let's go ahead and get started. Meanwhile, everyone else will join. I did want to, first of all, tell you a little bit about today's event and the agenda. So let me first do that and hide you, Kartik, for a moment. So where's present option? I'm still figuring this out. Okay, there it is. I think. Oops. So this is one of our speaker sessions at Break Into Data, and we have these almost every single week. And if you want to learn more about us, do check out our LinkedIn page. But otherwise, we are the community that started just by a bunch of friends who are trying to upskill in machine learning and AI earlier this year. I believe it was in January. And we initially started off on Discord. We had challenges like 30-day machine learning challenges, and we did these speaker sessions on a weekly basis and still are doing. So make sure to follow us and follow any updates. And I did want to say that we are launching something exciting. After 1 year of working, we realized that people have so many questions around machine learning careers, and especially Gen AI and artificial intelligence these days. So we decided to help people even more and create an exclusive community that has all the access to machine learning interviews and portfolio projects, and has even accountability process where you meet together with other people and you share what you learned. So I believe that's the best way of learning, is social learning. So we'll be launching this month actually, and only allowing 50 people at a time, just to make sure that we have the most motivated people joining us in the beginning. So go ahead and scan the QR code to join the wait list. I'm going to put it up there. And for today's agenda, we have, as you guys saw already, we have Kartik joining us from Seattle. He's a senior machine learning engineer at Meta, and he had an interesting story himself. He transitioned from software engineering, which I believe is a common path among all machine learning engineers. And I really wanted him to come over today and share about his journey and what were his challenges and how he overcame them, because I believe it's truly like inspiring when you see someone who's done the same like walk and could share you the path and basically all the roadmaps as well. And he's also a content creator on LinkedIn and Substack. You got to check out his amazing articles. That has a bunch of resources. I'm going to start recommending him on there because those resources are really practical and you can apply them right away. So check out his Substack. We're going to share all the links by the end of the session. So why don't we go ahead and begin? All right, where are you, Kartik?
Hey guys.
So Kartik, before you share, because you prepared the slides, why don't you share with us, like, where are you from? I want to know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm originally from India, a city called Jaipur, which is like one of the desert cities in India. And then I moved to US like in 2015 for my master's, and then yeah, since been here basically. Yeah,
Wow, so you've been in US for like 9 years then.
yeah, almost. Yeah, yeah.
Nice. And
Bye.
yeah, so I let's start with your presentation then.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, guys, keep in mind that we're going to be asking you questions also throughout the presentation. So in between slides, if you have any follow-up questions, make sure to put them in the chat because we're gonna try to answer as much as we can. This is going to be a dynamic and interactive session. So let's go ahead and get started.
Cool.
Oops. Let me replace this with your presentation. There you go.
All right. Cool. Yeah. Thanks, Mary, for having me. Yeah, nice to meet everyone. Yeah, let's kind of like let me kind of start with who am I. So yeah, I'm Kartik. I'm a senior machine learning engineer at Meta. I have been working in machine learning for like almost 7+ years now. Um, Previously I've worked at Amazon, I've interned at Google, so I have kind of like explored different big techs and have some idea kind of like how different companies differ in their culture and everything, especially in machine learning as well. And before that, like I was MS, I did my master's in computer science from University of Minnesota in US. Yeah. And like a bit about my career journey, I started as a software engineer at Amazon in a dynamic pricing team. I was working in machine learning, but still kind of like a software engineer, partnering with ML scientists there, working on like pricing algorithms, and then slowly transitioned there. And then I moved to Amazon Search Ads, which is like which like search is kind of like my area of interest. Like I love NLP and like love working on natural language related prediction. So yeah, so that's kind of where I started, and then I moved to Meta and also still working in search and e-commerce space mostly. Yeah, cool. I think I we got a comment that slides are a bit small. I don't know whether we can increase it or not, but yeah.
Yeah, let me know, guys, if the slides are small. Let's see. We can try to play around with this. Oh, okay. This is better, I think.
Yeah,
Cool.
cool. Yeah, so I mean, yes, perfect timing for the questions. Yeah, like my day-to-day responsibilities. So my day-to-day, what it looks like right now is like I do 30% of my time goes in like designing of like, like I own a product essentially, which is search ads at Meta. And 30% of my time goes in like planning essentially, like what problems we want to focus on, like, basically next year, what kind of problems users are facing and those kind of stuff, like identifying challenges with our product, and like determining the roadmap basically. So that's kind of like I would say like 30 to almost like one third of my time, I would say sometimes. And then rest of the one third, I would say, goes into like formulating, once we have identified that okay, this is the problem, formulating that problem and then formulating the model around it, what kind of like optimization we are going to work on, what we need to optimize for. And like, for example, if we see that okay, there are certain kind of specific queries that users are not finding it valuable, then how we can improve our relevance for that essentially. So basically kind of like user experience in a way. um, and then yeah, the rest of the one third time goes into like experimentation, model development, deployment, making sure that the model is scalable enough, running lots and lots of experiments, to make sure that it is a good user experience basically. Yeah, cool. Yeah, so let's kind of like go into different kind of ML roles, because I think this is one of the things that has been like very confusing for people in general, and it's even confusing even today, which is kind of like sad, but it is what it is, I guess. So yeah, like in general, different companies have different definitions of what your job responsibility look like, even for the same role. So basically, like let's say you are interviewing for a data scientist, that does not necessarily mean by default that you were going to work on machine learning. So that's why I tell everyone that always talk to recruiters whenever you are like looking at a particular role. Talk to hiring managers if possible, because that's where you get like a lot of information around like what kind of role it is essentially. Because I kind of like put everything under like an ML engineer umbrella. Like so, everyone is an engineer because you're building something essentially for a company, right? So like you are an engineer essentially, but within an ML engineer, your job responsibilities can be very different. Like it can be purely like model deployment and model scaling, which kind of falls into ML ops engineer bucket sometimes depending on company. You can be like completely working on model development, which can be sometimes like on the applied scientist buckets, depending on the company again, or data scientist sometimes. And like you can be working on like dealing with a lot of like data side of stuff as well, which sometimes can like will be falling under data scientist buckets typically. But again, like the I would say like don't stick to the names. Always look at the job responsibilities, because it's kind of like I would say like it's very it varies a lot from company to company generally. And then also like once you have like kind of like generic roles, there are also specialized roles. So there is like NLP engineers who purely work on, like for example, someone working on LLM, they are working more on dealing with natural language processing day to day. There will be like computer vision engineers who are working on like image processing, image classification, and those kind of problems. They can be engineers working more on robotic side of stuff. So there are like different specializations as well, depending on where you start and what your interests are essentially. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, like I guess I'll just jump right into it. One of the things, as Mary mentioned, that I started as a software engineer, and then I transitioned to machine learning engineer. The way I did it, like, and personal, like, and everyone's path will be different, of course. But like for me, like I started as like started working in machine learning within my master's itself. And I was like working with a professor, working on machine learning projects. But like as kind of like similar to everyone, like starting into a machine learning job right away is kind of hard. So I started as a software engineer, but one thing that I made sure of was that I am working in a team that closely partners with a machine learning team as well. So like if you go as a Android developer, then of course it will be much harder for you to transition to machine learning engineer than, let's say, if you're working on a team which has like machine learning scientists as well working with you, because you kind of get like a lot of let's say mentorship from those, and you can work problems on the problems on the side basically, and slowly transition your way, rather than like going into a completely different field, for example like Android development. Yeah, so that's kind of like what I wanted to make sure of. So when I started, like I kind of like basically started as like started in a team which had machine learning people in it, and then I found my problem space there, which was like I started in dynamic pricing in Amazon. So I kind of like slowly made my way there, started working on optimizing problems on pricing in Amazon, taking on projects on the side with like machine learning folks there, and working on like small features, for examples, like sometimes like working on small model improvements, those kind of things. So slowly kind of like made my way through to like closely more and more partner with the ML folks basically. And then yeah, so that's kind of like thing. And then of course I make sure of like what my deliverables are as a software engineer. Those are being delivered as well. Because if you're not a good software engineer, like it's going to be very hard for you to transition, because in order to convince your manager, you sometimes have to like you have to be like a good engineer in your main role as well. So that's kind of like always make sure that you're doing good at your job, the current job, and then you have the ability to like demand stuff basically once you make sure of that. Yeah, and then also like like tracking your team goals, make sure that you are understand what the team goals are, what kind of trade-offs you're making. Like let's say if you're working on a machine learning model, if you create a feature that is very slow in processing, then it's going to be very hard to productionalize it. So understanding those kind of trade-offs, that becomes very important. And when you start understanding those, that's when you're like start proving yourself as a good machine learning engineer essentially, because you understand what it takes to build a model and deliver that model essentially in production. Yeah.
Yeah, Kartik, before you go into the next slide, why don't I pick a question?
Yeah.
So let me show it. I am not sure if I'll butcher your name, but I will try my best. Mriti Ninash is asking, currently every company is demanding the tech stack of ML, DL, NLP, and LLM. How to deal with that? Because no one can learn all of these stacks, which I agree. And does every data scientist have to be good at all these stacks?
It's a pretty good question. I actually, so I think there is a difference between what job description asks for and what actually is going to be in the interview. The job description are like, to give an example, like sometimes like companies will put job description which are like pretty big, like generic in nature, and they will put everything there like machine learning, deep learning, NLP, but they generally don't expect you to know that. And when you give interviews, it's not necessary that it's, in fact, it's very rare, unless you're working in an NLP specialization, that it's you'll get like a question on LLM basically, for example, in your interview itself. So like if it's a more general position, I would say, by general I mean like more like you're working on prediction problems, it can be like fraud prediction, for example, or like it can be like very basic problems, then they will ask, they will expect you to know more around machine learning and deep learning. They generally won't ask you for NLP and stuff. But yeah, machine learning and deep learning, they are kind of our basics in a way now. Deep learning, especially like some things like back propagation, like simple perceptron models and those things. It's good to understand them, but I wouldn't say NLP and LLM are requirements, at least in the interviews itself, unless you are like specially interviewing for like a very specialized NLP position. Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed these days people are asking on the screening rounds for like transformer architectures, just like a higher level understanding, I think, for ML engineering roles.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's. I think it's still kind of like if you're interviewing for somewhere, like let's say if you're interviewing for search position, search ML engineer, they can kind of like ask you that, because like you're dealing with natural language more there. But if you're like interviewing, like let's say at a fraud detection team,
Mm,
it's going to be very rare. Yeah, so
got
kind of
it.
depends on the team itself as well. Yeah.
Great. Yep, let's continue.
Cool. Yeah. So one of the top five, like I kind of looked through all the questions that everyone had, and then I kind of like put them on ChatGPT and then kind of like summarize them. And one of the biggest question was like how to build the skills or a portfolio for ML engineer or scientist. So one thing I would like tell everyone is like PhD is not a requirement, but most ML roles kind of require you to have some sort of relevant experience. It can be either through PhD, it can be either through your master's, or it can be through your past job experience as well. So ML roles generally don't start at entry level. There will be companies who still hire at entry level ML roles, but they are generally very rare. They generally require like at least 1 to 2 years of experience, depending on which company you're interviewing at. So yeah, I mean, so like one of the things that I tell everyone, like if the biggest first thing that you should start is like finishing your fundamentals. So There are like a lot of courses nowadays, which there are like lots and lots of resources which were not present before, which you can take. Like for example, Andrew Ng course on Coursera, which is like great for like basic fundamentals of machine learning. I advise everyone who wants to start into machine learning, like at least do those. I would say like also do a course on like deep learning as well, so that you at least have the fundamentals right. And after that, you can kind of like start to work in kind of like a domain, I would say. So let's say you are a software engineer in some, like, let's say healthcare. So you can kind of like start with like looking into healthcare related machine learning problems and build your space from there. Let's say you are a master's student in like, let's say let's pick some university like University of Minnesota. Like they have like really good professors on like working in recommendations. So you can kind of like, if you're interested in recommendations, you can kind of like start partnering with those professors and see whether you can work on an interesting problem there. So that's how you kind of like build your portfolio essentially. Because I understand that as a student you don't have a lot of levers, but like if you're working with a professor, especially if that professor is pretty good and renowned in the field, like like it has a lot of value. And a lot of those professors have their PhD students in different companies, and if you prove your value to the professor, they can introduce you to those PhD students who can then refer you to their companies as well. So yeah, it's all about networking. Basically, you got to start somewhere, and I think that's a pretty good place to start, I would say. If you are an industry, like as I mentioned, like try to align yourself with a team that is already partnering with machine learning team, because otherwise then it would be very hard, of course. And then slowly kind of like work outside your job, or like get a mentor and then work outside your job to slowly work on small projects and build that relevant experience that you can use to then transition to a different role. Yeah. Yeah, for the fundamental, there's a question on the share the link of the fundamental course. We'll share the slides afterwards, so like that will have all the links as well. And yeah, you'll have that. So yeah. Cool. Yeah, and some of the other things, like I know that like there's a lot of times people say that okay, Kaggle is not helpful, but it is actually helpful. I still believe that Kaggle, Data Camp, all these courses, like projects that you can do, are actually pretty helpful. They are only helpful if you are actually like working on the problem and actually understanding the problem. One of the things that I've noticed is what people do is they look at the solution and they solve the problem, they get some metric, and they think that the problem is done. That's not the case. What recruiters want to look at is what your thought process is, right? So what would be good is that you build your experience on that problem. Like you try to, let's say you tried simple logistic regression on a classification problem, like let's just try a simple decision tree, how the performance improves or decreases, like what are the reasons of improvement, or what are the reasons the performance decrease for the model. So those kind of things, if you're doing, that's actually what is more helpful. And then the most important thing is writing about those learnings. So publish your articles on Medium, or GitHub, because that's where like you'll be, like sometimes like recruiters are like they find these articles and they'll reach out to you that oh, this person knows that. And that's only going to happen if you are actually, you have put a lot of effort in solving that problem. So don't just look at solutions, like try to solve the problem and genuinely try to understand the problem itself, is what I'm going to say there. Yeah. Cool. Sorry. Yeah, then let's look at like the next top question was machine learning interviews. So kind of like let's go dive deep into that a bit. So there are typically four types of machine learning interviews you can face depending on what kind of role you are looking at. So it's machine learning breadth, which is like kind of like an overview of across, like they'll ask like kind of like rapid fire round questions where, what's bias variance trade-off, what's the challenges with like, a logistic regression, or like, what are the metrics, evaluation metrics for classification and regression problems and those kind of things. um, so it's kind of like an overview of general machine learning. And then there will be machine learning depth round, which is like more like a case study of your past problems, or like something like even transformer models, for example, if you're if you're interviewing for an NLP role. So that's generally more if you're going for like applied scientist, or like working in purely on machine learning modeling side of roles. And then there is a machine learning system design, which is more like you'll be asked that, hey, design a search system, for example. So like what are the challenges you'll deal with that, like what will your training platform will look like, what will your inference platform will look like, what is your data pipeline that will look like, what kind of data you will need. So that's like a machine learning system design that you'll be asked for, more like around machine learning engineering roles. Yeah. And then one of them is like machine learning coding, which is like you can be asked like, hey, write a KNN algorithm, a basic one. So really depends what kind of role you're asking, depending on like, if you're going for more machine learning engineering, like ops engineering and stuff, like I would say prepare for machine learning system design more. If you are going for more like applied scientist level roles, I would say prepare for depth more, basically. So depends which role you're interviewing, which kind of role you're interviewing for. Cool. Yeah, I think that's kind of high level everything. We can take more questions as well, because we wanted to have like live Q&A as well. So yeah, I guess we can start there.
Awesome. So I did want to ask you, since I wanted to be also like an interview style too, about
Yeah.
your own personal like journey, and maybe like also talk about the current job market, and also Gen AI. So let's like spread those topics and talk about them, because I know you're working currently. Of course, we're not going to talk about directly what are you doing at Meta today, but we do want to know what is it like. For instance, many people are asked to like, what is your day to day as a senior machine learning engineer is like, and how was like your actual like journey going on there. I know you shared like you did some previous work during school, and then you did at the adjacent teams you did some micro projects, but for people that are just like maybe are not currently working and are trying to break into machine learning, what could be another path? So like, yeah, go ahead with whichever you want to start with.
Yeah, I guess like that's why I kind of like separated out for students and industry professionals. If you're already in the industry working on, let's say, as a software engineer or a data analyst, I would say the first thing you should do is like work in a team which has machine learning problems. So like either they have a sister team which is working on machine learning, and so that you can like you have the opportunity to collaborate, right? Because if you don't have those opportunities, it's going to be very hard by default itself. So
I see.
um, yeah, like I would say the first step is like find a team or a company where you can potentially have those opportunities. It can be like, you transfer as a software engineer there to a team which partners closely with machine learning team, and then slowly work your way from there. That is
Mm.
one way. Or you can directly like prepare offline and then like straight away go for the interview, which is generally, I've seen success stories with that, but
Oh,
like it's generally harder, I would say, in a way, than um, like transitioning your way to machine learning kind of. And then if
definitely.
you're a student, I think the best thing you can do is basically work with an advisor. People, like I don't think people realize how important it is to work with an advisor who is working in machine learning space. My advisor in undergrad, I worked on machine learning with my advisor there. I worked on my masters as well on machine learning with my advisors, and they gave me a lot of contacts. And through them, I found basically interviews actually, and they gave me a lot of mentorship as well. Actually, those PhD students. So it's actually very helpful. That you're and like a lot of professors will be looking for like volunteers, students who are excited about the problem space and want to work in it. So yeah, like definitely take that into account. Yeah.
Yeah, I did have questions about master's degree, and I think let's pull this question up because I personally do not have master's degree, and I do believe that like the people that I worked with that had master's degree, they just had so much more resources available to them from the university. But for someone who doesn't have master's degree, what do you think? Like, what could be the path there?
Uh, I mean, I think it would be basically that, like you start as a, like either like based on your undergrad, whichever field you have been, like you start there, and then like machine learning is in a way very interesting that it can apply to a lot of different space. So let's say you are working in healthcare, you are a data analyst there, you have a lot of understanding of healthcare related stuff that nobody else will have.
Mm-hmm.
The only additional knowledge you need is about machine learning itself, which you can actually gather nowadays with resources. So let's say you have these domain knowledge, you have the machine learning, the fundamental knowledge now. Now, if you can combine those two, you can become like a healthcare machine learning engineer. So, like start wherever you are.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, try to see if you can find problem spaces there in machine learning. As I mentioned, like it has to have some sort of problems, like in machine learning to like in order for you to like learn about those things. If you are like let's say an Android developer, then it would of course be very hard. So I would say like think about long term, like think about where you want to be like 5 years from now, and like channel your career according to that in a way. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. It's a lot more empowering than be like go back to school, you know, because I I hate when people say that because it's not the only path.
Yeah,
So
of
this,
course. Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I think now, especially now, like it was not the case in the past. I think in the past it used to be like a lot of weightage used to be for PhD, but the machine learning field has exploded so much in like last 4 or 5 years. I would say that, like I think it's opened up a lot, and I don't think people care about PhD or masters or as such any of those. They care more about your relevant experience more than anything else. Yeah.
yeah, it also depends on the role, of course, in the company. Because for applied scientists, they must have published some papers in the field of study.
Yeah.
So I think like yeah, for machine learning engineering, I love that there's a lot more paths. So let's take another question. There is a specific case question. I'm curious what you think. Aditya is asking about her current situation.
So I'm a SV transitioning to MLE, but can't gain practical experience. So yeah, I mean it. So okay, so for like, here's what I advise everyone: if you are getting into PhD is not a small task. Like it cannot be the reason that you want to get into machine learning and you have to get into PhD. So if
Mm,
your reason to get into PhD is you want to solve a problem space, you are very deeply interested in that problem space, only then get into PhD, because PhD is a lot of commitment. It's a 5 year commitment without any pay, and like only people who are genuinely passionate about that problem space can do it. So yeah, I would say you don't have to get into PhD. What is a right better approach is find a company where you join as a software engineer, but you are like you have a team there which is closely working with machine learning team as well. And then once you excel at your current team, you can start talking to your manager that, hey, I want to work more on the machine learning problem space, and then slowly work on the side projects, and then slowly prove yourself that, hey, you can work on machine learning problem as well. And then as you are also getting an experience working with mentors there. PhD is not necessary if you just purely want to get into machine learning. Yeah.
yeah, I love that. If your current company doesn't have any roles, then maybe it's worth considering moving to another that has adjacent
Yeah.
opportunities.
Yeah.
Great. Let's see. So there were some questions about Gen AI, and I did not ask you, but I guess you are in the Gen AI, or are you? Sorry, I think I missed it. Was it which projects are you working on? If that's not a
I
secret.
work in NLP. Yeah, I work on Gen AI stuff as well. Yeah, I mean, like it's definitely a very interesting space nowadays, of course, for sure. A lot of people are interested in it. But yeah, my primary area is like query understanding and relevance. So like when you type something, let's say a search query or something, you're searching something on Google, it retrieves like relevant results, for example. Like so that like basically the models behind that is what I'm working on generally. So that's kind of like my space. It can be LLM models, it cannot be, but yeah, depending on company to company. But yeah, yeah.
That's exciting. That's actually like one of the isn't like are you like working in the same technology as perplexity systems?
Uh, I cannot reveal anything, but not necessarily. Like there are multiple. I'll just say this, that there are a lot of ways of using LLM models in different ways. It does not have to be like like purely chatbot. So that's what I can say.
Mm-hmm.
So like you can use LLM model as a student teacher model basically, which is like you're trying to improve your smaller model with the help of LLM, kind of like those. Like there are like a lot of interesting applications of LLM, not just like chatbot, for example.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of LLMs, Henry's asking, do you have any thoughts on multi-agent frameworks, which seem to be gaining popularity?
Uh, so I think both have its benefits. So like of course like prompting LLM has its own benefits. Like let's say you want to work on like generating data like at a large scale. I mean even prompting LLM is like very beneficial. And then multi-agent frameworks like has its own benefits in like depending on like like retrieval augmentation and those kind of stuff. So like really depends what problem space you're working on. I wouldn't say like one is necessarily better than the other. So depends on like what problem space you're kind of working in. Yeah.
Yeah, I had an interesting like thought. I don't know what you think about this, but machine learning as a field is constantly evolving. But with the advent of like transformer architectures, and especially like these days, finding the applications with like RAG systems or like agentic frameworks, do you think like those like new areas of machine learning or deep learning, to be precise, are like a great maybe entry point for people that are starting out their careers as machine learning engineers? Or do you think like that's short lived and people need to like go back to like the most popular machine learning algorithms that do not have anything to do with Dale or
So what I would say is machine learning is very big by itself in a field, and there are a lot of interesting things happening beyond just LLM as well. If you're working in natural language processing for now, for example, or you're working in recommendations, then of course like LLM is like the thing right now, and it's a very interesting space to work in. It's not something that is you can like just jump right into it. Like you have to build your experience into like like basics of NLP as well. Like for example, what are word embeddings, what are recommendation systems, like how recommendation systems, like how does recommendation system works, what are different stages of recommendations. Like if you understand all of those, then you can understand that okay, what does how does RAG improves retrieval basically, or how does LLM improves like like for example document classification, for example. So depends on what kind of problem you're working on. But like let's say if you're interested in self-driving car, then you are like you'll be interested in something else. Like you might be interested more in image processing. So really depends. I would say there are a lot of interesting area beyond just LLM. So never just focus on LLM itself. But if you're interested in NLP, if you have your basics in LLP sorted out, then of course LLM is a very interesting space as well. Yeah.
yeah, and relating to that, I'm curious also which algorithm you have used the most and deployed the most.
I mean, of course I cannot say anything about that, but I mean, I work on transformer models a lot, is what I
Mhm.
can say. So as I mentioned, I'm my most of my experience is in NLP from past. Even in my masters, I worked in NLP problem space. So yeah, I've primarily worked in transformer models recently, at least. Yeah. Yeah, some versions of transformer model, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Subtain is asking, who are the direct consumers of your inference APIs? I don't know if you can answer that, but feel free.
Uh, I mean, I cannot answer this specifically. I mean, but like I'm like I work on a product, so I mean, the consumers are users essentially. So yeah, like it depends on what kind of product you're working on. Yeah, I don't work on chatbot, so yeah, there's yeah, like I don't have like as such consumer. My consumers are basically all the users. Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Great. And yeah, going back to your software engineering background, how would you describe the difference of your day to day?
So I had different stages of transition. So when I was I was a backend software engineer, so I was primarily working on distributed systems, like so AWS related stuff, like how to build scalable systems in pricing when I was in at Amazon. Then my first stage of transition, I was mostly working on machine learning infrastructure. So how would I design the training infrastructure for my team? How would I design the scalable inference platform for my team? So those kind of problems, which are like very specific to machine learning, but still you're dealing more with infrastructure. And then I kind of like the third stage was like I was purely working in modeling, which is kind of like right now that I'm working more on the modeling side, and then what model we can choose, how we can improve our models, and yeah, what kind of problems we are dealing with. I think as you grow in your career, like you have to deal with whatever problems comes on you. You cannot really choose. Like you are responsible for your product. So you work on different space essentially. You cannot say that I want to work on mostly on modeling side. You have to work across the different roles, I would say, in a way. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I love that there's like lots of questions coming in about how to transition and what kind of certifications you need, what kind of DSA. We can like do a rapid fire one so that we can go through, and then
Yes.
I have some.
Yeah. So for certifications, it truly depends on you. Like if you're interested in a specific space, it's fine to get a certification. One thing I would like to say is the certification itself does not help you get job itself. So if you're using for learning purposes, great. There is like if you're interested in AWS and like let's say SageMaker or on more on the ops side of stuff, then you can get a SageMaker certification, which is fine, which is pretty good technology. Really depends on. I wouldn't say there is one certification which everyone should get. It really depends on what you want to learn, honestly. But purely use certification as learning platform, not as like it's not going to act as a way to get you the job. Like it's generally like they are not generally that helpful in terms of getting interviews, for example. Yeah, actually, like one more question: being specialized in something is good or being generalized in the field? It's actually a very interesting question. So yeah, y- if you want to grow in your machine learning career, you will slowly become more and more specialized. That's going to happen regardless if you want to grow, basically. Because as like in order to grow, like you need to understand a certain thing about the field. Like you have to be like go deep into that field. For example, for me, like I have to go deep into recommendation systems. I have to go to deep into like NLP. So like I'm more specialized there as I have to grow there. But I started as more generalized, so I was working on more different kinds of problems. Like as I mentioned, that I started in pricing, which was more around forecasting models. So like yeah, you can start as generalized, and you generally will have more roles in that. But slowly, when you become more and more senior, you will specialize in a certain area, I would say, or certain domain. Yeah.
Yeah, but I was wondering like also regarding that, would you say like generalists are mainly on the infrastructure side, or they help like deploy models just because that's the skill that you can use almost anywhere?
It can be both, actually. So you can be like, let's say, more like a like ML ops engineer who are like like generalist, like working on different kinds of machine learning systems, because like even like, let's say you're designing a search engine, that's going to be very different than designing a self-driving car,
Mhm. Yeah,
backend basically. So it really depends. Even for modeling, you have generalist and specialist as well. In fact, like generalists are in general more common when you are starting out, like at entry level and mid level roles, because the expectation is that you can like take any problem and then like like build a basic model and then try to solve a problem. Like it's more about problem formulation and then solving the problem rather than going deep into something like NLP, for example. So but as you grow it, yeah, you kind of become more and more specialized. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. Um, let's see. But
There's a question.
sorry.
There's a question for you, I think.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, if you guys like have certain questions for me or like name them. So most of the stuff on the internet is related to the modeling heavy roles. Let me pull up the question. Can you suggest something for the engineering heavy roles, such as ML system design? Interesting. So, oh, you mean like resources to learn? So most of the resources on the internet are about models, but do you want anything from system design? So there is I am a big fan of GitHub repos, honestly. Like I have like a list of them. I actually had a Break Into Data's handbook, which I need to update. I started it like earlier this year. There was a bunch of links to all the free resources. There are many of them, but there is a ML system design specifically repo on GitHub. I can find it actually. Do you know which one I'm talking about? There's
I actually don't know which one you're talking about, but there are like a lot of courses I know that are specifically focused on machine learning system design, which is a pretty good, and they're also linked into my kind of
Hmm.
articles. Yeah, so yeah, if you get a
Oh
chance, you
yeah,
know.
Kartik, can you share your Substack in the chat so people can find you? Yeah, there's lots of resources, but the one that I like, one of the most my favorite ones is just from Chip Huyen. I know many of you guys know her. She wrote a book called Building Machine Learning Systems, I believe, and she has a new book called AI Engineer, which I started reading, which is awesome. Yeah,
I
and
don't think I have the chat permission though. You might have to copy from me.
got it. Yes. And here's Kartik's Substack, everyone. Make sure to save it. He has lots of resources there too. And I think you sent the fundamentals as
Yeah,
well.
the Chips book is really good, by the way. Machine system design. I've also recommended that in my Substack as well. So it's, yeah, definitely recommend that for sure. Yeah.
Nice. So, okay. What are the other questions? I think we already, Adele was asking about if we should specialize in domain. We already covered that. Or
Yeah.
That's for sure. And Aditya, thanks for the PhD advice. My goal is to become a ML scientist, but committing to a PhD doesn't feel practical. My goal is to enter into ML modeling. Is jumping into startups for ML a good idea?
I would say yes. To be honest, startups are where you can actually take more risks, and they are generally more open in some sense. Yeah, I would say like it would be better for you to start in a startup where you have ML opportunities than, let's say, start as an Android developer in, like, let's say, some other big company, for example. So because that's where you'll get more opportunities to work on machine learning modeling stuff. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Great. Let's see. I'm losing sight of all these.
There's one more question: is surface knowledge of data science tech stack is enough, or being really good at some tech stack is good? Uh, so, I mean, surface knowledge is in never, like, it's actually never good. I would say, like, it's always like, even if it's your, like, you have like overall understanding of the field, it's very important that you understand all aspects of that, like, different things, like say you can say that, oh, I understand classification and regression models, but if you don't understand how you can evaluate those models, what are the challenges, like how to handle data, like, like data bias and all those kind of things, um, then it the surface knowledge is not helpful. So like even within surface knowledge, like in machine learning, you have to have like some sort of like a deeper, I would say like slightly deeper knowledge of understanding of all basic models. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. And there are people asking also about DSA. For some.
Uh, yeah. So, I mean, if you're interviewing for like an engineering position, or even in some cases like applied scientist positions and stuff, like there will be at least one round for data structures. That's just yeah, that's how the interview works today. I cannot say whether it's right or wrong, but it's just what it is. So yeah, I would say like
Yeah.
definitely prepare for it. Yeah, the only exception to that is if you are like interviewing for data specific roles, let's say data analyst or data scientist. I think sometimes they don't have DSA rounds, but always check with the recruiters. They will give you the exact idea about whether DSA is going to be asked or not. Yeah.
Yep. And leak code is not going anywhere, unfortunately, guys.
Yeah.
Um, Yasser is asking, for those who started learning ML, is it necessary to dive deep into the mathematics of every algorithm, or should we just understand how algorithm works?
Uh, so I would say like you need to understand some parts of it. Like I don't think anyone is going to ask you like to derive like the model itself, but like if you're for working on a problem, let's say in a company, you'll see that sometimes you face challenges, and like the only way to solve that is like to understand how the model is behaving. Like like for example, for classification models, like if there is class imbalance, like you will have certain kinds of challenges that you can only understand when you know about the model, because different models behave differently and how they handle the class imbalance as well. So nobody's going to ask you to derive it, but if you don't know, then it's going to be very hard to apply as well in a real world scenario, for example.
Yeah, I don't think they ask you to write the formula down. Have you ever like faced that situation where they'll be like, okay, list this formula?
For machine learning depth rounds, you will potentially like it depends. So if you're going for more specialized roles, or like if you're going for more senior roles, they can ask you, especially in depth rounds, they can probably go much deeper into a particular problem. So depends on the kind of roles you're interviewing at. But yeah, if you're like at a mid-level or entry-level role, it's generally, I would say, yeah, rare to like write down the formula itself. Yeah. Yeah.
Got it. Great. Let's take a few more and we'll wrap this up. This is one of the most like intense Q&A sessions we had.
Oh, really? Oh,
Usually.
wow.
Yeah, so this is great, guys. Keep them coming. I feel like everyone's facing like similar situations, and I really like this one question. Actually, is asking, how do you not get overwhelmed by trying to learn everything at once? When you're starting out, everything seems important to know.
So the thing is, like, I never learn everything at once. I spread it out across like multiple years. So that's one thing I would recommend everyone, that don't put yourself like in a timeline that okay, you have to learn within like 1 month or 3 months or something. Like that's why I also talk about transitioning while you're working in your main role, because then you can like spread it out, and then have more time to learn about different things. So that's what I did. Like my transition took like almost, like I would say, at least 2 years. So like
Um,
I spent like a lot of time externally
wow.
outside of my main role to like truly like make the transition. So you don't have to learn everything at once. Yeah, that's one thing. And also you don't have to like straight away go into like let's say the topmost thing. Like let's say you're trying to understand LLM models, try to start small, try to understand basics, and then you once you like slowly build your experience, then you'll by default like understand more around LLM itself as well. So it's just an example, but yeah, something to think about. Yeah.
Yeah, I love this just because, like, from my past experience, I always would set like unrealistic goals, like, okay, I'm gonna cover this part of ML in like 3 months, and if I don't do it, I'm a loser type of thing, and I don't deserve to be in the role.
Yeah, I mean, that way, like I took 2 years. I don't know what should I call myself.
No, I meant like with like
No,
one
I'm
part.
saying, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Yeah, it makes good sense. Yes.
But yeah, I'm just like hearing these stories, you realize that this is a long-term game. Like
Of
if you're
course, yeah.
actually considering this path for yourself in your career, then you should really set yourself like 5 years down the line. Like just like you're asking people like whether you want to do PhD or masters, the same way here. You can do like long-term planning, but without having to go to those
Yeah.
institutions or just like doing it by yourself. I wonder,
Yeah.
like, did you get ever scattered? How did you organize your studying? Like,
So I kind of like, you mean in masters or during working?
during working when you were trying to transition within those 2 years?
So yeah, I always kind of like try to pair it up with like certain thing that I'm working on. Let's say, because like, let's say I was partnering with the ML team, as I mentioned, right? So like I try to look at what models they are working on, and then I kind of like try, like, over the weekend or outside of my like main job, like I try to read about those models. I try to understand what are the challenges with those models, what kind of features they are dealing with, like, like understanding like those kind of stuff like becomes. And slowly then I of course started getting an idea, okay, what they are working on. Yeah, like it depends on, yeah, like if like, I would say like there is, it's always good, like, if you're in a problem space, try to read around that rather than like, completely go outside of it and try to read in, like, let's say LLM. I just putting an example, but yeah, like definitely if you're interested in LLM, definitely go for it. But yeah.
Yeah, no shade on Gen AI, please. We love Gen AI. But yeah, I agree. Like having a goal, especially having a problem to work with,
Exactly.
makes the learning so much easier.
Yeah.
Because then you're not like, oh, thinking about, oh, how do I understand this thing? You try to like solve this problem, and on your way you naturally will have to understand all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say like if you are a software engineer and you are in a team which is dealing with machine learning problems, just look at what models they're working on and then just like try to read around that. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. Great. So we do have two people that wants to know answer to this question, and I believe it's a more common question because there are not only software engineers that want to transition to ML engineering, but also analysts. I think it's like another second, like most popular path. I don't know. Maybe they're both similar. But do you have any thoughts about transitioning from analytics?
Yeah, so like, I mean, I've like, of course I have not done it myself, so my information would be like of an outsider. But like one way to do think about is like, as an analyst, you understand about data pipelines. Once you understand about data pipelines, you understand that, okay, how like the offline backend system works. So you can use that into like some of the other, like, you can find a team which is dealing with those kind of problems where they have to build a lot of data pipelines, but they also have like machine learning problems being built upon those data pipelines. And then like partner with those ML teams, understand what they are doing, take projects on the side, and then slowly build your way to that. So that's one way I can think of. If I have to do it, I would go that route. But yeah, really depends as well on team to team. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, this is analytics is interesting because usually people transition to like data science roles from analytics just
Yeah.
because there's a lot of overlap. Because analytics is not really an engineering role, so
Yeah.
I feel like this would be a lot more ground to cover if you're transitioning from analytics because then you have to learn how to program, how to do like how to prepare for all these interview rounds.
Yeah.
So I think in my opinion it's a tougher transition. Uh, okay, what about this?
So I would say the most common mistake people try to do is they try to read around a lot of things. So okay, I would say two things. So one is they try, like, you need to understand what's your motivation to go into machine learning engineering, because like if you're not interested in the field, like if you're just going into the field for like because right now it's very popular, then of course at one point you're going to lose interest, and then like your learning will become challenging at that point of time. So like you have to like very like be very interested in like solving that problem, and that will help you to like first of all like have the consistent learning that will be required. And then the second thing is like not don't take a lot of things at your plate like from day one. Like try to kind of spread it out. Don't think that you have to transition like within 3 months. Like think about like a long term game plan that okay, if I want to transition, like it's basically like promotion. Like if I want to become like, let's say, like for me it took like multiple years to become a senior engineer. Like if you go, like if you ask any mid-level software engineer who are transitioning like promoting to senior software engineer, they will tell you that it's a 3 year 4 year like
Mm,
path essentially. So it's not like they are not like they are growing daily, but like they are not like chasing it like within like 6 months, because that's when you make yourself miserable. So think about that, like think about like where you want to be in 2 years. Don't think about like in months. Think about like more like year time frame, to deal with these kind of problems. Yeah, especially like I mean, one thing my very, like initially my manager told me, my first manager actually, your career is of like 40 years. 2 years 3 years here and there is not going to matter that much. So don't excessively chase. Think about like how you can make it more sustainable, in a way. Yeah.
I love that. It's like long-term thinking. Remember that it's not just like this year, the year. Because like I feel like honestly, for me, I realized like 2 years ago I started thinking a little bit more long term. Like
Yeah.
before that, I would be like, okay, what's in my plate for next 6 months? Like, what do I need to learn or be? But now it's like, oh wow, there's so much to learn. And instead of like rushing through things and then getting frustrated, I realize, okay, I want to take my time and actually understand this, like actually
Yeah.
intuitively get it inside me.
Yeah, and especially like most companies where you're making the transition, they will require you to be already performing at that role, at that level, to have you make like transitions and promotions are always lagging indicators. So basically, that you're working at that role at that level already, and then the company provides you the transition or promotion basically. So think from that perspective, that it's
Mm.
not like it's not doable in 3 months, basically, as simple as that. So yeah.
Mhm. So, yeah, I wanted to ask the follow-up question on that, then we take a few more questions and we'll wrap it up because it's time.
Yeah.
But you talk a lot about leading and lagging metrics in your articles, and many people might not know this, but I'll give a brief intro. So, like, leading metrics is something that is in your power, and you can do however much you like, and lagging metrics is something that you get as a result. Correct me if I'm wrong. So, what are the leading metrics? You mentioned already what is lagging metrics like in your career. What is leading?
Yeah, the leading metrics are basically, for example, like you are working on a like a side project on machine learning. The leading metric is like delivering that project, basically. So, like every business has some metrics that they care about. So, for example, if you are in a like let's say fraud detection team, like they will care about fraud rate. So your leading metrics is that you're improving fraud rate. Essentially, it comes down to that, whether it's through feature improvements, whether it's through model improvements, or even some backend improvement, like that will be your leading metric. So if you are, as long as you're improving that, you can see that okay, that's your right path basically, or you're going into the right direction
Mhm.
essentially. And then you can start talking with your manager that hey, I want to like make the transition or whatever, and then or like promote basically. And they will give you a goal that okay, you need to have this much improvement, or and you have to have this much complexity, this is your expectation. So they will have like these kind of like different metrics, that they will give you, and then you have to basically make sure that what is your path towards that. And again, like in more than a year time frame, like again, not in 3 months or 6 months, but like more like a year plan or something like that. So really depends, but yeah, those are like leading metrics. And the lagging metrics are like your promotion itself, for example. So um, you might be already working at that role, and you might be ready, but a lot of times, you can have like a reorg in your team, you can have your manager change, or you can have something else, and you might not have that opportunity immediately. Yeah, those are kind of like the lagging metrics, basically. Yeah.
Hmm. I love that. And there's a lovely comment about your contributions to community, Kartik. But I love those. Like, I feel like many people do not realize the importance of communication, especially if you're currently in a position to uh, possibly transition in adjacent team, ML team. It's like great to actually talk and bring up your interests and needs and plans to your manager, especially if you have a great one. Like managers make it or break it in your
Yeah,
career. So
that for sure is true. Yeah,
it's really
definitely.
important that you get a good one and communicate what are your plans, what do you want. I love this. So let's take maybe one more question, Kartik, and then we can wrap it up.
Yeah, sounds good.
Let me know if you wanna, if you know already.
Uh, let's see. What would you say is the most pressing and important challenge you're currently facing? I cannot talk. Let me pick another question, actually.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, if someone wants to get his first job in the field of DSML, what things they need to be good at? Okay, this is an interesting one. So I think what I would say is like the first thing that you need to know about is the problem space that you're trying to work in, basically. So let's say if you are working in like dynamic pricing, like I had to deal with like a lot of forecasting, time series data, those kind of stuff. So like I had to read around a lot around that. So if you're working in NLP, then of course, like you need to understand word embeddings, word to vec models, transformer models, like those kind of stuff. If you're working in computer vision, like you will have challenges around image processing and those kind of stuff. So that's why I say take your time to explore, figure out what kind of domain interests you, and then kind of like go in that direction, because as someone mentioned that there are a lot of things to learn and you cannot learn everything, basically. So try to kind of like figure out which team you are already in, what are the business metrics you're dealing with, whether they care more about revenue, whether they care more about fraud detection, whether they care more about user experience, like like all different kind of stuff, and then kind of like go forward from there, because you cannot be a good machine learning professional if you don't know your business metrics, or user metrics, because you cannot like you don't know what you're optimizing for, essentially. So that would be the first thing I would say that you need to understand.
Great. I think this is it. Thank you so much for coming in today. But before we wrap it up, I did want to say if you found this session useful, write a small post on LinkedIn or whichever platform you prefer and tag Kartik and me, and we'll do our best to support you in whether you're like sharing your learnings from this session, or it could also be your intention on your project that you're building now, or the interview rounds that you're preparing, so we could be like, let's go. This is this is a social community. I mean, we learn from each other and we want to support each other, not only like through these sessions but also online, because this is the way we network. So if you guys want to connect with each other as well, why don't you share your LinkedIn profiles and connect with each other, because it seems like there's like currently 50 people of you that are trying to break into the field, and it's a great opportunity to just like meet new people and support each other.
For sure.
So share it in the chat and also tag us on LinkedIn. Yeah,
Yeah.
Carter, do you have anything else to share?
Nothing, but yeah, thank you for doing this session. One thing I would actually say is when I started first writing on LinkedIn, you were the first person I followed, and I don't know if you remember, but like I mean, I looked at Break Into Data, and like thank you for posting all that stuff. I kind of like relate a lot with good mentors, and yeah, definitely follow Mary and Break Into Data, and there are a lot of good content she posts on. And also, of course, like she has like a lot of contacts who she invites on this session. So definitely, I would say, yeah, try to follow that. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Kartik. This warmed my heart. Thank you so much. And thank you for agreeing to come and share your journey because I feel like you have a lot to share, especially from where you are now. And as we said earlier, guys, make sure to follow Kartik and especially on Substack, I do believe he shares a lot of great stuff because there aren't that many machine learning engineers on LinkedIn or Substack, even. So I'm glad that I found you and have had you on my platform too.
For sure. Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah.
Awesome. Have a great rest of